Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Well, as you might be able to tell by the giant rack of seedlings beside me here, I like starting seeds. I start a lot of seeds, flower seeds, vegetable seeds. I start seeds. And so I thought I was probably in a pretty good position here to tell you the 6 reasons your seeds aren't germinating. So it can be pretty frustrating when you plant your seeds and you're waiting for them to come up and nothing seems to be happening. And so these are the things that you should be looking for or planning ahead for so that you have good success and good germination with your seeds. The first thing you want to think about, especially when planting seeds outside but also inside, is soil temperature. Different seeds need different temperatures to germinate. Some seeds will rot in cool soil, and some will just kind of bake away in too hot of soil. So you need to know what temperature your seeds like to germinate in. You can often go online and find a chart. This one happens to be from the Giant Veggie Gardener, and it's a great listing with not a huge amount of varieties, but a good selection of common vegetable seeds that you might want to be germinating, and it'll have the minimum temperature, the optimal temperature, and the maximum temperature. So those are things that can be quite helpful for knowing when you're going to start your seeds. There are seeds like tomatoes, peppers, aubergine, eggplants. They like warmer temperatures to germinate. So do things like some of your flower seeds like Osteospermum, Angelonia. Can't think of any other common flower seeds right off the hand right now, but so these seeds won't want to be kept on a heat mat to germinate, and that'll just bring the soil temperature up. Other seeds prefer cooler conditions, like I have some Nicotiana here behind me. It prefers not to be in a very warm soil to get germinated. And in fact, most of the time I don't even keep it on this shelf, but my seed table where I plant seeds is full right now. So I've just moved it over here right for the meantime. Other seeds that don't like very warm soil or can go into cooler soil are like spinach, lettuce, peas, carrots. Those are some common vegetables. Swiss chard could also be sown into cooler soils. Onions, lots of vegetable seeds. Lots of those spring vegetable seeds, they like cool soil. So it's handy if you're planting outside to take a soil thermometer out with you and just check. Or the seed packet might say as soon as the soil can be worked, and that's like if you can dig down in the soil and not hit ice. Like in my climate here, I could get down maybe this far and then hit ice. That's not good. But if I can dig down, a good hand depth there, then I'm probably good to start my seeds. In here inside, some people like to use a soil thermometer inside to check their soil temperatures. I don't get quite that technical, but I do keep a thermometer handy. And if I have something that I'm concerned about having the proper temperature, I'll actually stick the thermometer inside the dome and keep an eye on the temperature in there to see how my heat mats are doing. Or if I'm worried about being, too hot, then I'll keep it out by the dome on my other plants the same way, just to see the temperature. If you have a plant that likes warm soil and you have a heat mat on it, but you find it's getting too hot and you don't have a thermostat for your heat mat, because I don't run a thermostat with mine, you can just, if you have a timer that plugs into the wall that can go in like half-hour increments or every 15 minutes or whatever you find works well. I find about half-an-hour increments of on and off can often work really well for me to kind of just keep the temperature stabilized at a point where the seedlings are happy and not getting too hot. And when I need a heat mat under my seedlings, I'm running it day and night. You might find in your space that your space gets a lot cooler at night and you just need a heat mat at night, and then during the day it heats up and you don't need the heat mat. So you just need to, you know, keep an eye on the temperatures. Something that likes cooler temperatures that I see a lot of people have trouble germinating is celery. So if you're trying to germinate celery and you're having trouble, take it off the heat, put it somewhere cooler. You'll probably have it germinate for you. All right, so the next thing that is probably causing you, that could be causing you trouble with getting your seeds to germinate is if you're using old seed. Now, I find a lot of seed will last for years and years, but there are some seeds that are known to be just a little more finicky when it comes to age. You might hear people say parsnip seeds, onion seeds. I've heard carrot seeds. So if you have seeds that aren't germinating, check the date on the package. Check the date when you collected the seeds and just see how old they are. Maybe their germination rate isn't that good. Sometimes with the old seeds, I'd never throw a seed package away, but sometimes I'll just sow them really thickly. And then, you know, I'm guaranteed to get some up usually, but I won't get all of the seeds germinating for me because they're so old. Old seed as well, sometimes, because seeds are in a dormant stage, so sometimes if the seeds are several years old, they've just gone into such a kind of deep dormant stage that they will just take longer to germinate. So if you have really old seed, it might take almost twice as long to germinate as fresher seed will. So that's something else to keep in mind, is it might just need more time to germinate if it's several years old. When you're storing your seeds and you want to be able to keep them fresh and use them from year to year, it's best to store them properly. Seeds want a dry, cool place that's dark. That's what they want to be stored. So I find what works well for me is these containers like this. This is what I have been using for the last while here. I've tried a lot of different ways of storing my seeds. This way not only keeps them organized, but it's a little container, a plastic container that clips shut inside a large plastic container that clips shut. So unless I actually dump this into a big bucket of water, moisture isn't really getting in here. My seeds, most of my seeds are in some sort of paper envelope, so they're in the dark. And this room that I keep them in is generally fairly cool. I don't keep them right beside my plant stand here when I have this going in the prime of the season, because it is warmer over here. But if I put it, you know, near an outside wall away from this shelf here, then it's cooler. Now, my climate is a cool, dry climate. So if you live somewhere that's really hot and humid, this might not work for you. I also use, when I collect seed, quite often I'll put them in these little pill containers. They seal up really nicely, and they have this coloring on them, which is used to block light. And that's because some medications don't want to be exposed to light, just the same as seeds shouldn't be exposed to a lot of light. So that helps them to be protected from the light, and again, keeps them nice and dry. So that's how I like to store my seeds, and it seems to work well to keep them fresh for as long as possible. Now, some kinds of seeds will only be viable for a very, very short time, like sometimes days after they're collected. Those are not the kind of seeds that you'll be able to purchase, but if you're into seed collecting, then you may come across things like, I've heard the willow family are very unstable seeds, and they need to be planted pretty much immediately after being collected. So just keep that in mind if you're collecting your own seed, to research the plant and the seed and know how soon you need to get those seeds planted. Another thing that could be causing you problems when it comes to germinating your seeds is moisture levels. So seeds are sensitive to moisture levels. They don't want to be too wet or they'll likely rot on you, but they don't want to be too dry or nothing will happen. They don't know it's time to germinate. And you can't get them wet and then dry them out and then get them wet. They need to, once they've been wet, they're going to start breaking down their coating on their seeds. And once that coating starts to break down and the seed starts to open up to allow their roots out, once they dry out at that point, they're likely not going to continue. Even if you wet them again, the seed shell will kind of just stop in its place. The root won't be able to continue coming out, and it's damaged and it will no longer be viable. So you need to make sure that you're giving them nice, even, consistent moisture until they are germinated. So a good way to get them off to a good start with moisture is when you're planting your seeds, your planting medium or your soil that you're using should be just damp enough so if you take a handful and you squeeze it, it'll kind of hold its shape, but it breaks up easily. And if you squeeze it really hard, you might have just a little bit of moisture come out between your fingers, or maybe 1 or 2 drops of water come out, but nothing else. It's not going to have a stream of water. It's not going to be like a continuous drop, 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 drop. And it's not going to be just dry and crumbly in your hand. So you need that just nice damp soil. You can add things like vermiculite on top of your soil after you planted your seeds, and that will help to kind of hold a nice even moisture amount. It'll take up a little bit of excess moisture and release it when the soil dries out, so that can be helpful. Using things like humidity domes, like I have here, just a plastic dome that goes over your tray, will help to maintain a nice humidity level so that the top level of the soil doesn't dry out. If you don't have a humidity dome, you can just use like a piece of glass or plexiglass or like a plastic wrap or something like that. Even a container like this that you might have purchased produce in will work well. You can take your seed tray. Now this one's already sprouted, but if it hadn't sprouted yet, you could put it in there, close it up, and that would hold the humidity in. Once your seeds have sprouted, you want to take this cover off so that you're not having too much humidity around those delicate seedlings, or they could rot or get fungal diseases. So we want to avoid that. You need to be especially careful with very fine seeds that tend to be planted at the very top level of the soil, because that top level of soil is going to dry out a lot faster than, you know, a centimeter or more down in the soil. So you may need to get something like a spray bottle that gives a nice fine mist and just be spraying the top of that soil, you know, every day or so, just as if the soil is drying out on that top layer, especially with fine seed. So that's your moisture levels. Now going along a little bit with your moisture levels is your seed depth. Where you plant, how deep you plant your seeds is going to affect their germination. Some seeds want to be deeper down in the soil. They want complete darkness to germinate, and other seeds want to be just gently pressed on the top of the soil, and they want light to germinate. And then of course there's the seeds that are in between those. So generally larger seeds want to be lower down in the soil. Things like peas, corn, beans, nasturtiums, they want to be lower in the soil. And those seeds tend to be, you know, dried out. They're going to take more moisture to expand, and that lower soil is generally going to have just, you know, more consistent moisture in it. So you put those larger seeds down lower and the smaller seeds up higher. Read your seed package. It should tell you how deeply your seeds want to be planted, you know, or if they need light or dark to germinate. So that should all be there. If not, just give a quick search in your favorite gardening resource and see if you can find how deeply to plant your seeds. If you can't find that information, a general rule of thumb is 2 to 3 times the width of the seed is how deep you want to plant the seed. So that's something that you can try if you just can't find the information you need about seed planting depth. Difficult seeds. Some seeds are just difficult to get to germinate. They may have a very tough outer seed coat. Seeds that you may have heard having a tough coat might be peas, nasturtium, lupin. These are seeds that may require some scarification, a little bit of sanding on the outer layer of that seed coat, a little bit of a nick, or some soaking to help break down that outer layer before you plant them. Those methods can be very helpful, but you do need to be careful with them. If you're sanding or nicking, you want to be really careful that you're only doing the seed coat, because you don't want to go any deeper and damage the actual seed, or you could ruin the viability of that seed. And the same with soaking. You only want to soak them kind of like overnight, 24 hours max. And after that, you may start to wind up with rot, and you may wind up damaging your seeds. So you need to be really sure that you're going to be able to take those seeds from soaking and get them planted in some soil, because if something comes up or the weather doesn't cooperate and you have these seeds soaking, you could wind up just with a big mushy rotten mass. So make sure you have a plan for that. Another thing that can make some seeds just difficult to germinate is some seeds require a stratification. So that is a period of cold generally, and the amount of cold and the length of that cold time will vary by seed. So you really need to research that and find out. But generally they need a little bit of time in the refrigerator, usually in a moist like sand or peat moss or cocoa coir or something like that, or even some time outside over winter in a cold climate. So sometimes seeds like that will do well with winter sowing. But those are seeds, and some of those seeds need to go through a few cycles of that cold and then heating up and then cold and then heating up to get them to break dormancy. And there's something you really want to research and find out how you need to handle them before you get them growing. So another thing that might keep your seeds from germinating or keep you thinking your seeds aren't germinating is pests. Now this one usually only applies to things planted outside in my experience, but pests can be a huge problem. You have your mammal and bird type pests, like you have mice. They could just take your seeds, and squirrels occasionally, but usually it's like mice or voles or something that are gathering up your seeds that you planted, taking them off to their burrow, or just eating them. Rabbits and mice and deer and birds like to eat the top new growth. Birds will peck the seeds out of the ground on you and eat them. So you can have those kind of things in your garden and you might not realize they're there and eating your seeds before they have a chance to germinate, or just when they're really young seedlings and you might not even have realized they were up yet. Another thing that might get to those really young seedlings is slugs and snails. They can just come through and wipe out a crop, one evening or early in the morning, and you won't even know you had seedlings. They love those really tender young little sprouts off the seeds. Flea beetles, I've had a lot of experience with having flea beetles come in and just gobble up a crop as soon as it germinates on me. So it might seem like it hasn't germinated if you haven't been able to get out there and they're out there. You might think you have really sparse germination because you just see a few nibbly, knobbly little sprouts coming, but it's because something has gotten at it and eaten them right down to the soil level. I have also seen ants carrying my freshly seeded or freshly sown seeds away. I have not experienced this very often, But I have seen it, and I'll tell you, that is frustrating when you see ants coming and they've got, you know, a little like radish seed or something on. With a lot of those pests, some good quality fine netting or row cover can really help to keep them out of your seeds in the early days. You might need to get some sort of deterrent, or, you know, you could use like slug pellets or diatomaceous earth to try and combat some of those pests. But it can be a challenge. Sometimes the best thing to do is to pay attention. And if you have certain pests, like a lot of times you'll have things like rabbits and mice, and even some birds and things coming in early in the spring when there's maybe not a lot of growth in the more natural areas and other places. And so they see you putting out these nice fresh young things in the garden, and they just think, wow, buffet, you know, spring's here, and they gobble it all up. Whereas if you can put off your planting, if you have the time in your season to put off your planting and wait until some other things that aren't as precious to you are growing, you know, maybe there's a green space or a park or something nearby, and once the grass and some of the plants and things start coming up there, that might encourage some of those creatures to stay that way. They'll find that first and never come over to your garden shopping for groceries. Another thing is you can pay attention, like I find earlier in the spring and late in the fall, the flea beetles are really bad here. So I'm trying to figure out when the right timing is, because I have a lot of trouble with flea beetles, especially with my turnips. So I'm really trying to figure out when I can plant turnips that doesn't coincide with the flea beetles being a heavy pest pressure in my yard. Or you might want to plant a trap crop that will attract your pest problem over to that crop and maybe stay out of your more desirable crops. Or sometimes just putting out a larger start of something can help it to be a little less susceptible to, especially like insects and slugs and things. Sometimes plants, as they develop, will get a hairy or more textured kind of leaf that these pests aren't as interested in, whereas the really young shoots are really soft and tender, and they'll go for those quite quickly. So pest pressure can be a problem. Those are some ideas to try and alleviate that pressure and maybe have germination happening and the plants actually being able to grow to a size that you know they're there. The very last thing that might be making it seem like that might be keeping your seeds from germinating is your own patience. You need to have patience with seeds. Some seeds germinate very quickly, and some seeds take a long time to germinate. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one that, you know, has planted seeds and like an hour later I'm looking at them. I know they're not going to be germinated, but I'm still there looking, anybody up yet? Anybody up yet? And then I'm checking them twice a day or maybe more. You know, from then on, just trying to see, is there anything up yet? So we need to have patience. We have to have a realistic expectation. So again, look on your seed package. It should give you an idea of what your germination time or your days to sprout is for that particular seed. And you need to keep in mind, like I said, some of these other things, you know, were they having the optimal temperature? Because things that are, you know, maybe they're in a range of temperature that they will sprout and germinate in, but if it's a little bit on the cooler side or the warmer side, they might take a different amount of time to germinate. And the same goes for if it's an older seed, it might just take longer to break dormancy. So we need to have patience with our seeds, give them time, let them do their thing. And I always say, you know, whatever that expected time is, I like to give my seeds, you know, another week or so, depending on how long it's supposed to take them to come up. Give them some extra time, just in case they haven't had a chance to come up yet. Something that I've noticed with my Nicotiana seeds is I had some saved seed that was fresh from last year, that was just the raw seeds that I planted, and then I had some that was purchased seed that was pelleted, and I had purchased it the summer before. And so my saved seed was really fresh. It didn't have any pelletized coating to work its way through or anything. It has all come up and they're looking wonderful, whereas the pelleted seeds have not come up yet, but I'm sure they will. They need to break through that pelleted coating, and they're a little bit older seeds, so probably it's going to take a little bit longer to break that dormancy. And so I just need to be patient and not panic that those seeds aren't coming up, and know that they probably still will. They just need more time. The same as I have some cabbage seeds, stonehead cabbage. I had one germinate like within 2 days, and then they've been slowly every few days another one's coming up, and I still have some that haven't come up. So they've been coming up, like, I think it's been a week now. I just had one come up, and I had the first one come up almost a week ago. So I'm sure there's still going to be a few more. I know there's more seeds in there that I don't see a sprout from yet, but I'm sure they're still going to be coming up as well. So just because you have 1 or 2 seeds that came up really quick and they were the precocious go-getter seeds that, you know, are up and at them right away, doesn't mean that the rest aren't coming. You just need to give them time. So patience can go a long way in seed starting. So that's my 6 reasons that your seeds aren't germinating for you, and I hope that they helped. I hope they gave you some ideas of, you know, how to give your seeds the best start when you're sowing them, and some things that might be troubleshooting if you're having trouble, you know, having difficulty getting seeds to germinate. And let me know in the comments down below if you have any seeds that you've struggled with in the past, and you finally figured out what that little trick is, or, you know, anything that you want to say about seed starting down below. It may help me, it may help other people reading the comments. So it's always good to hear from you down there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.